All right, ready to dive deep into renewable energy. You sent me a ton of research on this.
Yeah, time to really see how renewable energy fits into creating a sustainable future.
I like that, sustainable future. So before we get into all the different types of renewable energy out there, can we rewind a bit? Like, why is this whole energy transition even such a big deal?
Well, we've built our whole world on fossil fuels for over a century. Coal, petroleum, natural gas.
Right, they towered all those industrial revolutions.
Exactly. And get this, they still account for something like 75% of the planet's energy.
Wow, that's crazy when you think about it. Like, all this stuff that formed millions of years ago from, like, ancient organic matter, and now it's powering our world.
Yeah, it really is incredible. But here's the problem. Burning all those fossil fuels releases a huge amount of greenhouse gases.
Right, primarily carbon dioxide.
Yeah, and that leads to,
Climate change.
Exactly. That's the catch. And projections show that fossil fuels will still be around in 2030, holding something like 72% of the global energy share.
So we're not exactly ditching fossil fuels anytime soon, even with everything going on.
You got it. It's a really complex problem. Technology, economics, politics, even social stuff all play a role.
Okay, so that brings us to nuclear energy, which is often seen as a powerful alternative because it doesn't directly emit greenhouse gases.
Right, true. Nuclear power uses nuclear fission, and it's a total powerhouse for generating electricity.
And really efficient, right? Just a little uranium makes a ton of energy.
Exactly. But, well, there's a downside.
Yeah, what's the catch?
Safety, the potential for accidents like Chernobyl and Fukushima, those were huge. Plus the whole issue of disposing of nuclear waste.
Right. Those accidents really impacted how people view nuclear energy. And the waste disposal issue is a tough one, even with all the advancements they've made.
Yeah, for sure. Nuclear power is here to stay, but its future really depends on overcoming those safety concerns and perceptions.
Okay, so let's move on to the main event, renewable energy sources. These are the ones that seem to offer the most hope for a sustainable future, right?
They do. Renewables like solar, wind, hydropower, geothermal, and biomass take a totally different approach. They replenish naturally, and they emit way fewer greenhouse gases.
Yeah, it seems like this whole global push for renewables comes from us realizing that our energy-hungry lifestyles are impacting the planet in a bad way.
That's it. We're seeing the effects of our fossil fuel dependence more and more every day, and it's pushing us to find cleaner options.
Okay, let's break down each of these renewable energy sources, starting with hydropower. It's been around forever, right?
Hydropower has been here a while. It uses the energy of moving water to make electricity. In fact, Brazil gets a whopping 68.2% of its electricity from hydropower.
Wow, that's amazing. I can see why it seems pretty clean and reliable. But I'm guessing there's more to it than that.
There always is. You have your big dams with those huge reservoirs, but you also have smaller plants that use the natural flow of rivers. Each has its own pluses and minuses.
Okay, so even with hydropower, which seems simple, there are trade-offs. What are some downsides?
The big ones are the environmental and social impacts. Big dams, especially, can disrupt ecosystems and even displace communities.
Ah, so even renewable energy isn't always perfect.
Exactly. And that balance is different depending on where you are, the tech being used, and the needs of the community. There's no single solution.
Got it. All right, let's talk about solar energy. I feel like I see solar panels everywhere now. Are we in the solar revolution?
We're seeing a huge increase in solar, that's for sure. It's about taking the sun's energy and turning it into electricity using photovoltaic cells, which are what make up solar panels.
Okay, how do those photovoltaic cells even work?
Imagine this. Sunlight hits those special cells, which are usually made from silicon, and the light makes the electrons in the silicon really active. This activity generates an electrical current.
So it's sunlight becoming electricity. That's pretty cool.
It is. And there are actually two main types of solar tech out there. Photovoltaic and heliothermic.
What's the difference?
Well, we just talked about photovoltaic, but heliothermic is different. Think about using a giant magnifying glass to focus sunlight onto a point so strong that it heats up a fluid. Then that heated fluid can drive a turbine, which generates electricity.
Ah, so it's like using the sun's heat to make electricity. I've definitely seen more solar panels on rooftops lately. Is that because the cost has gone down?
It definitely has. Solar panels are way cheaper than they used to be, making them more affordable for everyone, and that's driving huge solar farms being built all over the world.
It really is amazing that we can use something as abundant as sunlight to power our homes and stuff.
I know, right? And the cool thing is, researchers are always trying to make solar cells even more efficient. Like perovskite solar cells, for
What
example.
are those?
They could be way more efficient and cheaper to make than the silicon cells we use now. We're also seeing things like bifacial panels, which capture sunlight on both sides, and tandem cells that use layers of different materials to absorb more energy.
Wow, so solar technology is really advancing quickly. But what about the fact that solar power depends on the sun shining?
Yeah, that's the big challenge with solar, that intermittency. Cloudy days and nighttime are a problem. We need better energy storage solutions if we want solar to be reliable all the time.
It sounds like energy storage is going to be crucial for all renewables, not just solar. Okay, let's talk about another big one, wind energy.
Wind energy is all about using massive turbines to capture the energy in the wind. The blades spin, turning a generator that makes electricity.
I know Brazil has been investing a lot in wind power, haven't they?
They have. They've got all that land with ideal wind conditions. But like solar, wind energy works best in certain locations.
Right, and you need those strong winds. Plus, there's the whole issue of how those giant turbines look.
That's true. Some people don't like how they look, and then there's the concern about the impact on birds.
Right, bird strikes are a real problem. Okay, let's move on to geothermal energy. What can you tell me about harnessing heat from the earth?
It's all about using the Earth's internal heat to make electricity or even provide direct heat. Think of it like the planet giving us clean energy.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So how do we get to that heat? Are we talking about drilling down to the Earth's core?
Not that deep. Geothermal plants access heat that's closer to the surface. There are two main methods. Direct use, where you're using that heat to warm buildings or for industrial processes, and then indirect use, which is where you use the heat to make electricity.
I feel like a big advantage of geothermal is that it's a continuous power source, unlike solar and wind. But isn't it only available in certain places?
That's true. You usually find geothermal resources in areas with volcanoes or hot springs. Like Iceland, they rely a lot on geothermal energy.
Right. But are there ways to expand its reach?
There are. Scientists are working on enhanced geothermal systems, which are basically creating artificial geothermal hotspots. And then there are binary cycle power plants, which can generate electricity from lower temperature sources.
Wow, it seems like we're always finding new ways to overcome limitations. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about biomass energy.
Biomass energy is all about using organic matter as fuel. Things like wood, crops, even waste. It can reduce waste and generate energy.
I love that. Turning trash into energy. What are some of the ways we're making biofuel?
There are all sorts of methods. The classic one is burning wood for heat, but we're also seeing advances in producing biofuel from crops and even algae.
Algae? Seriously?
Yep. Algae grows super fast and you can cultivate it almost anywhere, even in wastewater. Plus, it produces more biofuel per acre than regular crops. Of course, there are still some kinks to work out with large-scale production.
It's incredible how many different renewable energy sources are out there, each with its own advantages and challenges.
Definitely. And that's why we need a diversified approach to energy. No single source is perfect. A sustainable energy future is probably going to rely on a mix of all these different renewable technologies chosen based on the needs of a particular region.
So what are some of the biggest challenges that are keeping renewable energy from really taking off?
Well, intermittency is a big one, as we've discussed. The sun isn't always shining, and the wind doesn't always blow, so we need to find ways to store energy and make sure it's available when we need it.
Right, energy storage seems like a crucial piece of the puzzle. What else is standing in the way?
Another challenge is integrating renewable sources into the existing power grid. Our grids were designed for big, centralized power plants, mostly running on fossil fuels. Adding in these smaller, decentralized, and intermittent renewable sources is a real challenge.
So it's almost like we need to redesign our energy system, not just replace the sources.
Exactly. And another big obstacle is cost. Even though the price of renewable energy has gone down, it often requires a large upfront investment compared to fossil fuel plants.
I can see how that would be a barrier for some. So how do we overcome these financial hurdles?
Government policies and incentives can really help. Things like tax credits and subsidies can make renewable energy projects more appealing to investors.
So we need governments to step up and support this transition.
Definitely. We also need to remember that renewable energy isn't completely impact-free. We still need to think about the environmental impact of things like solar panels, wind turbines, and even hydropower.
That's a good point. We need to be mindful of the environmental impact throughout the entire life cycle of any energy technology.
Absolutely. Sustainability is about the whole process, not just the final product.
This is getting interesting. Now that we've talked about all these individual energy sources, is there a way to rank them in terms of their overall sustainability?
There is. It's not as easy as just looking at emissions. We need to consider things like land use, water consumption, the impact on communities, and the economic viability of each energy source.
So it's a pretty complex calculation. Who comes out on top? Which renewable energy source is the most sustainable?
Well, based on research that took all these factors into account, wind energy consistently comes out on top.
Really? Wind energy is the winner.
Yep, followed by geothermal and hydropower. But it's important to remember that these rankings can change depending on the location and the specifics of a project. What works best in one place might not be the best solution somewhere else.
So there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Exactly. We need to understand the nuances of each energy source and how they'll fit in with the local environment and the needs of the community. Welcome back to our deep dive on renewable energy.
Picking up where we left off, we're exploring those exciting trends shaping the future of energy. We briefly talked about advanced energy storage and smart grids, but let's dive in deeper. What's all the buzz about batteries these days?
Everyone's excited about pushing battery performance to the limit. We want batteries that store more energy in a smaller package, last longer, and of course, become cheaper.
Affordable and efficient energy storage? Who wouldn't want that? What are some of the leading battery technologies that are driving this?
One of the most promising areas is solid-state batteries. They're different from those lithium-ion batteries we use in our phones and laptops.
Okay, what makes them different?
Solid-state batteries use a solid electrolyte instead of a liquid one. Sounds like a small change, but it can make a huge difference.
I'm curious, what's so special about a solid electrolyte?
Well, they don't leak, which is a safety concern with the liquid ones. They're also more stable at higher temperatures, so they could last longer and be safer under extreme conditions. And they're more compact, so we could have batteries with much higher energy densities.
So smaller, safer, longer-lasting batteries that can store more energy. Sounds almost too good to be true. Are we using them yet?
They're mostly still in the research and development phase, but a lot of companies are making good progress, and some are even running pilot production. So you won't see them in your electric car just yet, but keep an eye out for them.
Solid-state batteries, got it.
Yeah.
What about those flow batteries you mentioned before? What are they all about?
Flow batteries are a whole different animal. They're perfect for those large-scale energy storage situations, like storing energy from huge solar or wind farms.
How are they different from regular batteries?
Instead of storing energy in solid electrodes, flow batteries use liquid electrolytes that move through an electrochemical cell.
So it's like a battery with a constant flow of liquid energy. Interesting. What's the advantage of that?
One big advantage is that they're really scalable. You just use bigger storage tanks for the electrolytes, and boom, you have more capacity. Perfect for situations where you need to store massive amounts of energy, like with those grid-scale storage systems.
Makes sense. They're like the heavy lifters of the battery world.
You could say that. And they're known for having really long life cycles. Since the electrolytes are always flowing, you have less wear and tear compared to those solid electrodes and regular batteries.
So we have all these different types of batteries, each with its own strengths and ideal uses.
It's about finding the right battery for the right job. Solid state for maybe electric vehicles or powering houses, and flow batteries for backing up the grid and smoothing out those renewable energy fluctuations. And there are even more out there, like metal air batteries and even hydrogen-based storage.
It seems like battery technology is really taking off. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about smart grids. I'm still not totally clear on what makes a grid smart.
Think of a regular power grid as a one-way street. Energy goes from those big power plants out to everyone who needs it. But a smart grid is more like a two-way street with lots of communication and control systems in place.
So it's not just the physical stuff, it's about data and communication.
Exactly. Smart grids use sensors, digital meters, and advanced communication tech to get real-time information about energy generation, usage, and conditions on the grid. Then they use all that data to make things run smoothly, efficiently, and reliably.
Okay, I see how this connects to what we were talking about with renewable energy. Smart grids could help smooth out those ups and downs from solar and wind power, right?
Absolutely. Smart grids can look at weather forecasts and real-time data to predict changes in renewable energy generation. Then they can make adjustments as needed, like tapping into those storage systems or even letting users know to cut back on their energy use during peak times.
so they can anticipate changes in energy supply and demand and respond quickly to keep everything balanced.
Exactly. Smart grids also make it much easier to integrate things like rooftop solar panels into the grid.
That makes sense.
They can manage all these smaller scale sources of energy, making sure they're contributing to the grid effectively. And they even let people sell extra energy back to the grid, kind of like turning their houses into mini power plants.
Oh, so people can actually be part of the energy solution. Smart grids are really about creating a more flexible, responsive, and reliable energy system overall. But how do we actually make this happen? What needs to be done?
It takes a team effort. We need utilities to invest in updating their equipment with better sensors, communication systems, and control technology. And we need policymakers to create rules and incentives that encourage smart grid development.
So it's not something that just happens on its own.
Definitely not. And users need to embrace this new system and maybe even change some of their energy habits based on what the smart grid is telling them.
So we all need to be involved. Okay, we've talked about advanced batteries and smart grids, two big trends impacting the future of energy. But thinking bigger picture, where do you see the world of renewable energy going in the next decade or two?
One thing's for sure, renewable energy is only going to keep growing. The cost of solar and wind power has plummeted, making them more and more competitive with fossil fuels.
So renewable energy is making more and more sense economically.
Absolutely. And the urgency to address climate change is growing globally. That's putting more pressure on everyone to switch to clean energy.
So lower costs and climate concerns are pushing us towards a cleaner energy future. But where do you see things specifically heading in the coming years?
I think we're going to continue to see a wide range of renewable energy sources being developed and used. Solar and wind will probably remain dominant, but geothermal, biomass, and even ocean energy are becoming more important.
Ocean energy, that sounds fascinating. Harnessing the power of waves and tides, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's early days for ocean energy, but it has enormous potential, especially for coastal areas. The ocean is a massive, untapped source of renewable energy that we can harness.
It's amazing to imagine all the possibilities. But as we transition to a renewable-powered world, are there any risks or challenges we should be aware of?
It's always important to look at both sides of the coin. One of the biggest challenges we keep coming back to is intermittency. The sun and wind aren't always available, so storage is key.
Right. Finding a reliable and affordable way to store energy seems like the ultimate goal.
It is. Another challenge is the environmental impact of renewable energy technologies. It's generally much lower than fossil fuels, but it's not zero.
So it's about being responsible and minimizing those impacts throughout the entire process from start to finish.
You got it. We need to make sure we're not creating new problems as we solve the old ones. We also need to be mindful of the social and economic effects of this energy transition. A lot of people depend on the fossil fuel industry for work. We can't leave them behind.
So sustainability isn't just about protecting the environment, it's about making sure everyone benefits from this transition.
Exactly. We need to make sure everyone benefits from renewable energy, and we need to do it fairly. The potential rewards for developing countries are huge. Renewable energy offers them a path to cleaner, more sustainable, and more reliable energy. And that can boost their economies, create jobs, and make life better for their citizens.
So the challenges are real, but the potential is even bigger.
Definitely. And that's why it's so important for countries to work together. Developed countries have a responsibility to help developing nations make this transition by providing financial support, sharing knowledge, and making sure they have the resources they need.
It's about working together to create a cleaner, more sustainable energy future for everyone.
Absolutely. There are lots of challenges, but the global momentum behind renewable energy is undeniable. We're seeing a change in how we power our world, and it's happening on a scale we've never seen before.
It's really exciting and inspiring.
It is, and this deep dive has really shown that. We've explored the technology, the economics, the impacts, and the global forces behind this change. It's clear this is more than just switching energy sources. It's changing how we relate to energy as a whole.
Okay, we're back for the last part of our deep dive into renewable energy. In the first two parts, we really got into the details of the technologies and what's driving this big energy shift. Now, I think it's time to zoom out and look at the global picture. Like, how is this renewable energy revolution playing out around the world?
Exactly. This transition isn't happening in isolation. It's a global movement with every region and country playing a role in their own way.
All right, so let's take the world tour of renewable energy. Where are we seeing the most action? Are there big differences between regions?
Europe has been leading the way in adopting renewables for a while now. Think Germany, Denmark, Spain. They've done a lot to integrate solar and wind power.
I've heard about Germany's energy transition plan, the Energy Vend. What's so special about it?
They didn't just set goals, they took real action. They invested a ton in solar and wind, used incentives to help these clean energy sources grow, and even started phasing out nuclear power. It's been a pretty big change for them.
So they've been proactive and willing to make tough decisions.
Absolutely. And sure, they've had some bumps along the way, but their experience has taught other countries a lot about what it takes to transition to renewable energy. It shows it can be done if you have the right policies, make the right investments, and really commit.
Makes sense. So Europe's definitely up there. Who else is leading the way?
China's another big player. They've poured resources into solar and wind power lately. They're now the world's top producer of both. It's amazing how fast they've expanded their renewable energy capacity.
Wow, the world's top producer. That's impressive. Why is China investing so heavily in this?
A few reasons, actually. Their energy demand is growing super fast, which puts a strain on what they have now. They also have major air pollution problems because they rely so much on coal. And they see clean energy as a way to boost their economy and be a global leader.
Seems like a smart strategy. They're tackling their own energy and environmental problems, and they're positioning themselves as a leader in a global industry that's just going to keep growing.
Exactly. And their investments are helping to bring down the cost of solar and wind for everyone. It's a good thing all around.
Okay, so Europe and China are out in front. What about the U.S.? Where do they stand?
The U.S. has definitely seen a good amount of growth in renewables, especially solar and wind, but their approach has been a bit more, well, piecemeal.
Piecemeal, what do you mean?
A lot of what happens with energy policy in the U.S. is driven by individual states, not so much a single national plan. Some states, like California, have been really aggressive in setting targets and helping renewables grow.
Right, California is often ahead of the curve when it comes to environmental stuff.
They've been leaders, for sure. But other states have been slower to adopt renewables, maybe because of political differences or because their economies are tied to fossil fuels.
So it's a mixed bag in the U.S., with some states moving faster than others.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But even with that, the general trend is towards more renewable energy. It's becoming more affordable, and more people want action on climate change.
Okay, so the U.S. is getting there, even if it's not a smooth ride. Are there other parts of the world that are emerging as leaders in renewable energy?
India is definitely one to watch. They've set big goals for solar power, and they're installing it super fast all over the country. And they have a ton of sunshine, so it makes sense. They're also putting money into wind power and exploring other options like biomass and small hydro.
It sounds like a lot of countries are driven by a mix of things. A need for more energy, a desire for cleaner air, and the economic potential of clean energy.
That's a great point. And these things are driving this worldwide shift toward renewable energy. Latin America is another interesting region. Brazil, Chile, Mexico. They're all actively tapping into their potential, mainly in wind and solar.
It seems like Brazil, with all their hydropower, would naturally embrace renewable energy.
They are a hydropower leader, but they're also branching out into wind and solar. And Chile has some of the best conditions in the world for solar power.
It's incredible to see how different parts of the world are using their own unique strengths to contribute to this global change. It's like we're all in this together, trying to build a cleaner energy future.
That's a great way to put it. Everyone brings their own strengths to the table, but we need to acknowledge that not every country is starting from the same place. Developing countries especially face unique challenges when it comes to renewable energy.
What are some of the hurdles they have to overcome?
Getting the money is a big one. Renewable energy projects can be expensive upfront, and that's tough for countries with limited funds.
So finding the money to get these projects off the ground is crucial. What else?
A lack of expertise and the right infrastructure are also big challenges. Building good renewable energy systems requires skilled workers, specialized equipment, and the right infrastructure, like power lines and ways to manage the grid. Some regions just don't have those things yet.
So it's not as simple as just installing some solar panels or wind turbines.
Right. We also need to consider the social and economic aspects. Many developing countries rely on fossil fuels for jobs and income. Moving away from those industries needs to be done carefully and fairly. We need to invest in retraining and make sure those communities aren't left behind.
It's about making sure that everyone benefits from renewable energy, not just certain groups.
Exactly. It's complicated, but it's worth it. Renewable energy offers huge potential for developing countries. It's a way to create cleaner, more sustainable, and more resilient energy systems. That can lead to economic growth, new jobs, and a better quality of life.
So there are challenges, but the potential is huge.
I agree. And that's why it's so important for countries to work together. Developed countries need to help developing nations make this transition by providing funding, sharing knowledge, and making sure they have the support they need.
It's about everyone pitching in to create a cleaner, more sustainable energy future that works for everyone.
Absolutely. The challenges are real, but so is the global momentum behind renewable energy. We're seeing a real transformation in how we power the world, and it's happening on a scale we've never seen before.
It's been quite a journey, exploring the world of renewable energy with you.
It has. We've seen the cutting-edge technology, talked about the economics and the impact on the environment, and looked at how this energy revolution is playing out across the globe.
And I think it's clear that this is more than just switching from one energy source to another. It's about completely changing our relationship with energy itself.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, this wraps up our deep dive into renewable energy. We've covered a ton of information, explored some big ideas, and hopefully inspired some folks along the way.
I think we've achieved what we set out to do. Our listeners now have a better understanding of not just what renewable energy is, but also why it matters, how it works, and what it could mean for the future.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep pushing for a more sustainable world.
See you on the next Deep Dive.